can take a seat or find a seat. If you haven't got a seat, do shout. We can pull small chairs up. Is that right? Yeah. And so, welcome to the People's History Museum and to our kind of afternoon session, which we've called Glimpses of the Future. My name's Dan, and I'm from an organisation called Nesta, so we're an innovation foundation. And between us, Caroline from TLAB, we're going to try and bring some sort of order to the chaos as we've designed it. So bear with us as we kind of guide you through this afternoon's session. But what we can do is promise you that it's going to have a very different feel and tone to it. We want you guys to connect and talk to each other. As we think about the futures, how do we turn the glimpses of the future into something that is bigger as well? So lots about sharing and learning what we're all up to. And I was thinking about how best do I come back to this session today, and I kind of keep coming back to this whiteboard, which if it works, which is by Margaret Wheatley. People heard of Margaret Wheatley. She's kind of a leadership thinker, doer, based in the US. And a lot of our work at Nesta I always come back to this, which is very great change starts from small conversations held amongst people who care, which I think as Martin and I were and others were planning the session, it just feels like that quote just really resonated with the ethos of what Martin's created. And thank you, Martin, for convening everyone here today. So a lot of this afternoon's session is about you guys talking, connecting, sharing, and starting to build and share those insights into something special. So bear with us as we go through this afternoon. Caroline.
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me okay? I've got deaf in my ear, so I don't know if I'm shouting. So is that your shouting or no? It's okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Caroline Spears. I'm from Think Local That Personal. And I just want to give a little bit of context to TLAB's role in this work in moving to asset-based areas. So many of you will know, because I know many of our partners are here, that TLAB is a sector-wide partnership, and the mission of the partnership has always been around supporting organisations to transform through person-centred approaches and community-centred approaches more and more. We've always been really clear that this is about thinking far less about process and procedure, albeit they're important, but actually thinking much more about people having a life, not a service. And everything we've produced as a partnership and all the networks we run with our partners, we run with that in mind. And taking an asset-based approach, in our view, is a key route to achieving that, to achieving a life, not a service. I think it's fair to say that 2 years ago, we started this conversation in earnest when we published a sector-wide shared commitment on engaging and empowering communities. That document confirmed a really clear consensus among system leaders that we just have to do things differently. And one of the key actions from that document, from that shared commitment, was the need to move to asset-based approaches, asset-based commissioning. Since then, we've produced a number of resources to support this shift, and Alex Fox will take you through one of those documents in far more detail, asset-based areas, in a little while. It's a document that Alex has authored, and in my view, a really helpful roadmap to moving those approaches from the margins to the mainstream. To help with that push from the margins to the mainstream, TLAB's most recent ambition has been to develop an online resource of innovation, something that we think can be used by people who want information about care and support or are accessing care and support, something that can also be used by providers, but actually in particular something that can support commissioners to help them understand the wide models of care that are out there and to think about the different ways of investing in people's health and well-being by investing in those very different models of care and support. Colleagues at Nesta have very helpfully developed a graphic to set out what this can look like across the spectrum of care, and there it is in all its beauty on the wall over there, a graphic which, in my humble opinion, really begins to bring to life what a new future of social care could look like. If you visit the TLAB store, we've got far more resources over there, far more tools and all manner of fact sheets that can help with this shift. But there's one thing in particular I just want to draw your attention to, and that's the Making It Real document that we relaunched a couple of weeks ago. And we've just come from an incredibly successful session at NCAS where we spoke to colleagues, about 200 colleagues over there, about the difference this can make in changing conversations and moving to asset-based areas. And my colleague Kat and Rachel and Isaac and Lawrence will tell you everything we ever wanted to know about Making It Real, but we're too afraid to ask. I think that's it from me, Dan, so back to you.
Thank you. And as Caroline pointed out, you are surrounded, so you're in the middle of this hall, but you're surrounded by some amazing innovations, innovators and resources. And there'll be plenty of time halfway through this session for you to go and find out a little bit more and kind of talk to people, kind of doing exciting, innovative stuff. But just to give you a sense of what this session looks and feels like, because I'm conscious that you've come here probably intrigued, curious about what the hell we're going to do. This is how we're thinking about it, and you're probably also wondering why we've got a higgledy-piggledy room set up with kind of a circular thing going on in the middle. It will all be revealed, I promise. So here's what this session looks like. We're going to do something that we call a fishbowl, where we're going to get some of leaders from the systems from York to Leeds to Somerset to kind of share what they're up to, what they're learning. But we're going to do it in a slightly different way. So rather than ask them to present up here, as you and I are doing now, we're going to put them into a fishbowl where we need you to participate and ask questions as well. So we'll guide you through that when we get to it. We're then going to have 45 minutes for what we're calling a marketplace. But it's a marketplace with purpose. And the purpose, again, the whole of this session is to really get some new insights into the question on the left. So how do we create asset-based areas and shift innovative approaches from the margins to the mainstream? And for us, that's a really tricky question, actually, because we know that there's some good practice happening in different pockets up and down the country, but taking it to scale, mainstreaming it, I think we're still collectively learning how to do as a country as well. So that's the question that we're really going to try and tap into our collective wisdom to try and solve. So after the marketplace, we're going to put you guys to work as well, with a slightly lightly facilitated session that starts to bring the asset-based guidance that Caroline mentioned to life a little bit, and get you guys to think and share about actually how do we take that agenda to the next level, what do we need to do next. And then we're going to bring that all together and share the insight and the feedback that we're learning, and gather that in a way that we can then share it with the NCAS conference tomorrow as well. So some of what happens today will feed into what happens in the next couple of months, but will immediately feed into a session that's planned tomorrow with you and Sky leading as well. Does that sound like a good plan? Yes. Is everyone in the right room? Yeah. Thanks, Mom. You are, Martin. Thank you. Everyone else? Yeah. Sound good. Thank you. Bit of energy. So just to get us kind of talking and working, my colleague Charlie from Leicester is just going to walk us through a quick exercise, just to get us talking moving.
Thanks, Dan. Right, so as mentioned, and you should all have been given a bingo card. If anybody hasn't got one, there should be some spares on tables, but I do also have some here. So if thank you very much. So the name of the game is to get you up, just get you ready into the frame of mind for you for the afternoon, get you talking to some people who you might not necessarily have spoken to before. So on the bingo sheet there will be 9 categories. What you need to do is you need to go and find somebody who fits in that category, and I want you to write their name on. Only one person for a sheet, so if they can't come and say, I'm all 4 of those, so you've got to talk to 9 different people. There are prizes for the first 3 people to complete their sheet. So when you've completed it, make sure you shout house, okay? Everybody clear?
Or bingo.
Oh, bingo.
Yeah, house, whatever.
Whatever
just
you want to shout. Okay, right. I think everyone's got sheets, so off we go.
It's an interesting thing to do.
If you think you're finished, come to the stage. Come, we need to verify. Okay, grab a seat, guys. Thanks. Right, can you grab a seat? The prize winners have been really nice to actually sharing already, which is amazing. Thank you. So we're going to move into the next session, which we have called the fishbowl. And the reason we call it a fishbowl is you'll notice you've got a group of people sat in the middle of the room, all facing each other, probably feeling a little bit like this. I don't know. How do you guys feel? So far. And what we're going to ask them to do in a minute is just spend 5-6 minutes talking about some of the kind of innovative work that they're doing, sharing what they're learning, but also sharing kind of some of the barriers and blockers they're kind of facing within their local systems and local places. But the way the fishbowl works is we're going to create some space for some spare seats and empty chairs. probably next to you, Stephen, I would imagine, so maybe if you can move over a little bit. And the nice thing about the fishbowl is these guys get to share what they're up to, but the empty seats are there for you to jump into and ask questions. So as you're kind of listening to what they're saying, start to kind of scribble down some questions, really positive questions or really tough questions, to kind of just really get the most out of the insight that is in the middle of that fishbowl. Hence, we want you guys to be the fish jumping into the new bowl as well. So to get us started, I am going to move into the middle of the fishbowl and go over to Martin, who is from Liverpool and also worked in York. So do you want to just say who you are?
Yeah, Martin Farron. I'm Director of Health and Social Care in Liverpool, but I've only been there 12 weeks, I think now. I was previously Director in York. What else would you like me to say? Okay.
We'll get that.
Probably the bigger learning for me in York was that I took a lot of what we were doing in Barnsley and very much tried to have a different conversation with the public. So we started doing things like, instead of using channel shift and all those sorts of things, we started to open opportunities for people just to come and have a conversation. And locally people call them talking points. And we started seeing people bringing issues and looking for solutions and matching people up, which I thought was quite innovative in the sense of it was about working with the assets that people have and sharing their stories, which has gone from strength to strength. We joined the local area coordination as a way of engaging local communities, and again, fantastic support through primary care, and linked into that, the NHS supporting social prescribing and bringing people into sort of social action that way. And what they saw was a fantastic improvement in outcomes for people with low level mental health needs, but also a 20% reduction in the numbers of people going to primary care with that type of particular need. So for me, it was about delivering a better outcome, but actually it was also a more efficient use of resource, where actually people who were often just turning up at service became the people providing the support to other people. I think probably one of the bigger issues for me is thinking about how we make engagement very active, and we co-produce and design, and that takes work, but it also means us going at a pace where we don't just try and be driven by budgets and targets and things like that. So I think for me, you often don't know where the journey is going to take you. I think that's very different in sort of program management terms rather than projects. I think for me, the other bigger one really is about how do you set the right culture, and our job is how do we support people to engage in a different way with some of the other agencies, because actually the issue I think for me is what are the outcomes that people are trying to achieve rather than what are organisations trying to do. The two don't always match. So I think for me it's supporting people to have the confidence just to have an open conversation. And it's a very different conversation for people, and a lot of people have very different needs for the whole range of things you need to do. And I think there's a slide that was sent through in terms of what we were doing in York, and the answer was that you have to do all of these things. You can't just do, there's no silver bullet. If there is a silver bullet, it is about having that different conversation. So in the time I was in York, making sure we had a very clear people strategy, which was around recognising the role of volunteers and so on. So I think a lot of people have got examples, things like the role of Good Gym was fantastic, and it accelerated at such a pace. Local area coordination, which was in a lot of the more challenged parts of the city, but actually produced some fantastic outcomes which people were sharing. The social prescribing stuff was quite interesting. We went with those who were willing, and we had fantastic support through the lead GP. Once the other GPs could see what it was delivering, they wanted it. And it just mushroomed across the whole of primary care, because for me it's a very different conversation with primary care. It wasn't a conversation with the CCG, it was directly with GPs, providing somebody primary care and basing people in there. The work that we've done, I think, really with community catalysts, very much around how do we support communities to set up quite small examples, really, of how they can start to do things. Some grow your own type stuff, use of allotments, transport and travel schemes for people. So some fantastic things there. In terms of shared lives, it's a journey we're still on, but it was, for me, about challenging that we could start to use it across a whole range of different needs, use it for respite, use it in mental health, not just often tends to be more focused around learning disabilities, so how can we actually expand it? The example that I mentioned before around Good Gym was one which I think it was the fastest growing in England at the time when it set off. It just accelerated, and the numbers of people are in it. They were getting mowed down by groups of runners, which was quite interesting. Yeah, well, as a cyclist, it was, you see 50 people running towards you. It's quite interesting. But I think that one of the things that was kind of interesting, because I've got to say I was a sceptic, was around the importance of art and culture, allowing people to express it in different ways. I'll just do a plug, actually. We had a significant issue in York around suicide. There's a film just recently going around, it's not on general release, called Evelyn, which is around the impacts of suicide. I've got to say I went to see it. So if you've known anybody who's had significant mental health problems, if you know anybody, which is probably most men in this room, who struggle with grieving and the after effects of death, it doesn't have to be suicide, go and see it, but make sure you take a very large handkerchief. But it's a really powerful story told by a family about the impact for them, which I think most of the people in this room would resonate with. It was the power of talking, and what they did is they walked down the countryside, they met other people and told them what they were doing, and they all started sharing their stories. It's one of the most powerful films I've ever seen. And then I think through our neighbourhood work, really trying to engage members in a very different conversation, which in different local authorities, how you engage your local authority members to be part of the system can be an interesting journey. Let's just leave it at that. And so, yeah. 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 The positive for me in Liverpool, within 12 weeks, what we have got the CCG to sign up to is we're putting in a post around integrated personal budgets. We're actually very poor at direct payments of personal budgets across the whole system. We are having a conversation with a big independent sector, not-for-profit provider around shared lives, and we want to go at some scale. Shared lives actually started in Liverpool, and we haven't been making the best use of it in more recent times. We are going to do some of the things that are on there, like an information and advice strategy. We've got the CCG to agree to, our plan is to put the whole of the CCG out of hospital budget and the whole of social care budget together into a single plan. And I think for us, it's a bit, we've got a provider alliance, we've also got an approach where we're bringing together joint commissioning, but we want to bring all of that together as a sector into a very different thing. And I think the big conversation that we're now starting, which is quite different, is that the council are just signing up to an asset-based approach. The CCG are signed up to an asset-based approach, the mental health and community provider is signed up to an asset-based approach, and it becomes the glue between the whole thing. So we're just on the verge of going out and speaking to the community around how do we engage them in a very different conversation. So for me, there's a lot of learning from other places. The thing that is different is both the size and the scale, but also the fact that all of the statutory agencies have got the same vision, which frankly in other places that's been hard work when we can't get other agencies to necessarily sign up to it.
Afternoon, everyone. So I'm Stephen Chandwell, currently the director in Somerset. Prior to that, I was the director in Shropshire. So for me, I've been working within a strengths-based approach for probably the last 5 to 6 years. When I went to Somerset 3 years ago, they had a fervent belief that they wanted to work in a strengths-based way. but basically had absolutely no idea how to do it. They believed that they could flip the system and overnight go from a paternalistic traditional model to a strengths-based model, and then were surprised when it didn't work, you know. So for me, what was critical to begin with was to find those individuals in your system that share the belief you've got and share a desire to do something different. You only need 2 or 3 to start that movement. So I quite quickly identified those individuals and then started to work up, not in a sense of a document that sits on a shelf, but a clear strategy of what we wanted to do. So we talked very much about having a strengths-based approach, but then we started to talk about promoting independence as being the underlying philosophy of everything we do. And that took off, but then struggled to get traction because I think people didn't really understand what operating in a strengths-based way or working in a way that promotes independence really does need to be. So again, we looked at and took advice. John Bolton helped us in defining some of the metrics that are indicators that we have a promoting independence approach, and started to build a series of alternative ways of responding, whether that's how we respond when somebody brings us up in the first instance, how we respond to people in their communities. So Mark talked about drop-ins. We similarly developed a number of those across the country. We found opportunities. So we started a piece of work supported by Community Catalysts around what we refer to in some sense as micro-providers. So these are small, independent individuals do 10 to 12 hours of support each week. We started that work because we had a gap in our traditional home care market, but actually it transpired to be a very person-centered, strengths-based approach. So our aim was 30 to 40 micro-providers. We have nearly 500 today, supporting 900 people in a very strengths-based approach. And I suppose people say to me, so what were some of the secrets to success? Well, firstly, you've got to find those individuals, those like-minded individuals that want to work with you. You've got to create the capacity, the freedom for them to operate. So you tell the procurement bots, piss off, basically, keep out of the way. You absolutely, and this is a tension, you performance manage people to say, show me the impact. Show me the difference that's having. So, when we started our contact centre, we were responding successfully to about 23% of the people who rang up. That's success measured by the people who rang up, not by us. 23% is a disgrace in one sense. So we dismantled the conversation we were having there. We trained people, we reflected with people, we worked through. We're currently dealing in that first conversation with over 60% of people who feel their needs were met successfully. We had a massive spike in improvement from 23% to something like 37% in one fell swoop. This is one of the magic moments. How did we do that? We removed all the professional staff from that environment and let people get on and have ordinary conversations. So another learning point, utilize your professional staff really carefully and at the right point because they're such a valuable resource. But if you don't use them effectively, they can have a detrimental impact on what you're trying to do. We've been working passionately on this for 2 to 3 years now. And are we making a difference? I believe we're making a difference. So our customer satisfaction is what people tell us, 95%. So there's still 5% to be done. Staff satisfaction, I should have asked, has anybody heard of Somerset when I came in here? Because we're a little small county, don't really get into the news very much nowadays. Actually, our staff in adult services are some of the most satisfied in the council. Satisfied because they believe they have control and autonomy. They're able to do things. Cost control, we're managing within our budget. We don't operate a centralised approach. Practitioners, teams make that difference. And what we've successfully done in conclusion is we've been able to take that approach and transfer it across every bit of our business. So hospital discharges down. Why are they down? that strengths-based, promoting independence conversation is happening on hospital wards. So some of our community connectors are in hospital wards talking to individuals, helping them get out. So it's about having that clear underpinning vision and holding people to account, measuring to ensure that the success you wanted is being delivered.
Great, thank you. And I'm really happy you talked about things like procurement and performance management, because I think from my experience, I think seeing new models emerge, it can be quite a challenge to access procurement and kind of manage that kind of demand for data and impact as well. So we might, I'm sure, have a few questions on that as well. Over to you guys.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mick Ward. I'm the Chief Officer in the Leeds City Council, and I'm with my colleague Kim, who leads a lot more transformation work in adult social care and health. We're talking here about the link between asset-based community development and strength-based social care, which is why we're doing a double act. I was about to say we're using some slides. Partly is to emphasise a few points, and obviously it's about access issue, and you can press it again. So at the heart of it is that image, the glass half full, and we apply that both in individual work, so that's that individual workers, particularly social workers in this case, thinking about what people have, and not always think about what they don't have, and in our community work it's about what the communities have, and not always going on about the deficits within the community. And that's critical for two reasons. One of which is, I think it's much more powerful to work with individual communities to talk about their strengths. It's a much more effective way of doing stuff. But actually, I think it's really difficult as individual workers to top up that glass and to focus on what's wrong with people and try and fix people. But as a commissioner, it's increasingly difficult to top it up as well. So what instead we're really interested in is nurturing what's in the glass. And the best way to really think about driving it, and this does take up a lot of time, it's the most important quote I've come across, it's from Edgar Cahn, and we invented time banks, civil rights there, not about TV. So no society has the money to buy what it takes to raise children, make a neighbourhood safe, care for older people, make democracy work, address injustice. The only way we're going to address those social problems is by enlisting the very few people now who are classified as clients and consumers and converting them into co-workers and partners and people who put the on it. And that's important because the latter bit for me is moving from doing to or for and even with people to the citizens themselves, leading change, and crucially the top bit is saying, you know what, there are some things we should have never done through services. And I have a history of trying to do that myself. The idea that you solved loneliness in older people by shoving them in special buses and driving them to death centres was insane. So what we're much more interested in now is the notion of neighbourliness. And that's applying that community that I'll talk to you about, and Kim will talk about some individual work.
So Mick's going to talk about our approach with communities. I'm going to give a quick overview of the work we've been doing with our staff teams and particularly our social work teams. So under our umbrella of strengths-based social care, we've started with social work. A lot of what we've done on the ground is quite similar to the work described with York and Sunset. I'm going to focus more, I guess, on our approach. For us, we wanted a real culture shift. We wanted a shift in mindset from very much looking at eligibility and whether we should be working with people or not, to looking at how we work with people and whatever they've popped up as their issues. But what we recognised was we were a very process-driven authority. So the approach we've taken with our teams is to say, how do we shift that? Where have you got your big problems? Where do our processes restrict you from really working in the work you wanted to do as social workers? And what do you want to do to change that? So we've been doing strengths-based social care for about 18 months now across all of our different social work teams, in hospitals, in secondary mental health. It varies very much from team to team because they have driven the areas that they want to change and gradually build from there.
And in terms of communities, we're trying 3 approaches at the same time as ABCD. One is simply an approach, getting that language, getting that glass half full mentality into everybody. The other is a way of working. Not everything's going to change into an ABCD model. We've had really positive work with a range of third sector organisations, but other directorates. So some of the best work going on in the city now is within libraries, within cultural organisations, within sport, etc. But at the heart of it, and you're not supposed to call it a model, but he works for this. He's what we're doing in several neighbourhoods now. He's funding a community builder whose role is to find those community connectors, those key people living in the community, prepared to give up their gifts, their time, their energy, their knowledge. We encourage bottom-up asset mapping, and we fund it tiny, small sparks funding, £50, £300, no monitoring, just encouraging people to do it. And out of that, we're seeing dozens and dozens of things. They're not services, they're knit and natter groups, they're walking groups. Some of that looks suspicious, like a dating agency, all of whom are connecting people together. And what both things have in common in terms of our successes and our failures, challenges are.
So in terms of the things that have helped, our strategies, right from our health and social care strategies through, all mirror and encourage this support approach. We've got really strong political support on this one. In neither instance did we set off with our primary driver being to save money. And whilst that may have happened along the way, and we're very much welcoming of that, it certainly wasn't what we started off with, and probably wouldn't have worked if that had been it. And this is all being led from the ground.
And finally, so the challenges are, we already do that, and that's both individual social workers who I work like this. No, they don't. They're obsessed with assessment and eligibility and process. But also the same challenge in the third sector, which is some great work, but my God, do they like a service. We're still wanting to see CPC for all citizens, and I think people with high care and support needs, we're not there yet. Actually, the work that does go in the third sector is fantastic, so it's quite a hard ask to push it a bit further. There's always evaluation, early intervention prevention, although I'd be more positive about that now. I think I'm the only council officer in the country who has a personal key volunteer care, which is everybody needs to have 3 good friends, which is not a bad thing to do. And of course, you've got resources. We're lucky enough to put some significant resource into pure ABCD, some £250,000, but I think to really test it out, we need £1 million by 2020, £2 million after that. And it's tough finding even that sort of money nowadays.
Right. And how are you doing with your personal target?
I think I'm doing all right. So, my little lovely example, I was doing a version of this to a set of services that work with homeless and drug and street alcohol, and I mentioned that, and it went down well, and then they emailed me 2 weeks later saying they've written into job descriptions. So now people working with that group, yes, make sure you turn it to the methadone clinic, yes, make sure you TP, but they're also thinking, how do I make that happen? So the ABCD Pathfinders keep diaries, so that's how we begin to get that wealth. And it's the stories. ABCD is about the stories, and that's really critical.
Great, thank you. Wendy?
Hello, croaky voice. Hello, everybody. Hello? I'm Wendy. I work in Barnsley Council, the Director of Communities. I'm just going to share our journey. Since 2011, we've been battling away at building asset-based approaches, really. So do a little bit of the processes stuff, unfortunately, because our approach is more than health and well-being. It's about everything. It's about building strong and resilient individuals, families, and communities, and they intertwine at various stages across the working week. And we do have a very strong belief in Barnsley that neighbourhoods are the primary unit of change, and in working in a neighbourhood way, we probably can really achieve some sustainable change. And my colleague from Leeds there was saying, actually, we weren't driven by money. It's really important to say, actually, efficiencies, want to use that word, are a byproduct often of working locally and galvanising the assets of people, buildings and spaces, their business community. So we've been on this adventure since 2011. And we took a great decision back in 2011-12 to create and carve up the borough, 230,000 in Barnsley, in South Yorkshire, if anybody doesn't know where it is. Carved up the borough into 6 areas and 21 wards within there. We also quite bravely top-sliced quite a bit of money out of the council's budget to devolve it into local places so that they could co-create plans. So understand what's it like to live here in this place, what's it like for my neighbours in this place, What's it like for my friends? But also what's it like for services? What does demand look like? What we're understanding about this community? And start to build conversations and co-create plans about what we might do about some of these things that we're understanding. And some of these things are just really simple things that take very small amounts of seed funding. Kate, my colleague, will talk to you about some of those examples. So we co-created these areas with our politicians, strong Labour area, we do have at the West, Conservative, politicians and some independents, so it's a mix, but we set on this adventure as an apolitical adventure because there was a recognition that councillors had become somewhat disconnected from the communities which they are supposed to serve. So it was important that we took them along the journey with us. Their relationship with their communities is much stronger now than it has ever been in Barnsley. So we, I suppose, really have galvanised people. So what we see now happening is sort of place-based teams. They're not in an organisation, sort of restructured everything to bring everything together, but we've recognised the relational capital of all of that asset and started building up strong conversations about what matters most. That's spun off in terms of place-based, outcome-based commissioning in an area with embedded social value metrics in it, like expecting providers, local providers, to come back with ideas and suggestions, but also making sure that we're considering things like apprenticeships, volunteering, etc. So the return on investment from our very localised commissioning is huge. I've got the fact. Kate might give you some figures on that, but we've started to do some return on investment work that really matters about making the case for even more changing, more of the adventure really locally. So if you think about any area, an area, for us in Barnsley, that's a real rich picture of contribution, and we are making the most of that contribution. And through the work of Kate's area, we have a stronger communities team that supports each of the areas, and they are fabulous brokers extraordinaire that have that conversation with somebody that's got an idea. And I'll probably say through those conversations, we've seen that massive increase in volunteering. We've had a huge increase in new community groups being formed, so that building confidence that yes, I can do something, I can take some of this space, I can deliver some great solutions. So our model, if you want, in an area is about the business community, playing into corporate social responsibility. It's really important. Business community can and do a lot in Barnsley, which we formed a policy in the council around employee-supported volunteering. We enable our employees to have up to 4 days volunteering in the borough. All of our commissioning into locality money has to be spent with local businesses, and that's really successful. Over 90% of the money that we spend goes to local businesses. It's all about developing that sort of resilience.
Thank you. Yeah, I head up the Strong Community Service in Barnsley, and I think the fact that there is something called the Strong Community Service in Barnsley actually says quite a lot. When we started the journey, a lot of people when Cerritos first started to buy, people said we were a bit mad, didn't they? And that we'll never make it work, and people will never come and join us, and people wouldn't come and do it with us, which is exactly the model that we're trying to do. And how wrong it was, and I'm really pleased it was wrong. Since 2011, we've had 23,290 people come and volunteer. And that was from a very low base of traditional volunteering. Lots of people did things for each other, people, the York model, but formalised volunteering was very low. So that's a huge thing. We have 2 different sorts of localised community projects. We have some slightly larger ones that are run by our area councils, and they're composed of the local councils for the area, giving them a role to look at data and work with communities and community consultation to come up with ideas about what they should commission. And since 2011, they've commissioned 9.94 projects with a value of about 6.5 million. So we're talking about some fairly chunky projects. And at a local level, we also have citizens working with their local councillors with a smaller budget for getting people involved. And we've got some absolutely wonderful projects with us. And we've actually got two of our projects here today. Now, I'll say to Karen, will you say something? But I've just been given the 30 seconds, so...
There'll be lots of time talking afterwards.
Bumping Spaces, talk to Karen. It's a fantastic peer support network that she has set up in the Pennington area. Just, really wonderful example of people helping people. And she's also involved in potential community ale projects as well, so if you like beer, have a go for Karen. And also we've got Mike from Befriend, who setting up our new befriending service in the Durn, using a very micro volunteering model. The Durn community is an extremely hard-pressed community with very little time for people to give, they're just trying to get by. And the model is an hour, give an hour a week, which is going to be fantastically successful. And I could go on and on.
I'm not going to let you. Last 5 seconds.
We have two of these on the back. They're on this table at the back here. So do come and talk to us. Do come and these are all case studies of the stuff we've been involved in. I could bore you for Britain. I'm not going to.
But you can do that in about 15 minutes. So.
Cool.
Also, do you guys just want to stand up and wave so people can see you and in the marketplace go and talk to these guys to find out more about what's happening in Barnsley? Joe, over to you in Wigan. We're covering different parts of the country so far, so it's quite impressive.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jo Wilmot. I'm Assistant Director for Wigan Council, and we want to talk today about the Wigan deal and how we've worked to transform into an asset-based place. I'm a bit scared of Dan's ruthless timekeeping, so please forgive me. I've got a piece of paper because I could talk about Wigan forever. So I'm going to try and squeeze it all into 6 minutes. For people who are not familiar with Wigan, you don't know what you're missing. I've finally convinced my family to take the plunge and move to Wigan. It's on the outer edge of Greater Manchester, midpoint between Manchester and Liverpool. We've got a population of 323,000, covers 75 square miles and 70% green space. It's important to our story, the identity of Wigan, so it's helpful for you to have that. A recent University of Cambridge study identified Wigan as the 5th most impacted local authority in terms of austerity, and we experienced a 43% budget cut. But in 2010, we realised that we needed to do things very, very differently to both survive and thrive over the last 8 years. And we've achieved all of the necessary savings while also improving outcomes for residents and overall levels of happiness and satisfaction. So the only stat I'm going to bore you with today is that Wigan is the happiest place to live in Greater Manchester, because it's the one I'm most proud of.
That also sounds like a challenge to everyone else in that
area. Cheer up! So how did we achieve that? We created the Wigan deal, which is a psychological contract between the council and local people. And as my colleagues have talked about earlier, that was really about repositioning relationships to one of equals, and really liberating that sense of shared endeavour and collective energy to really make a difference to the people and to the place. And I think it's that creativity and innovation that has really made that key difference over the last few years. So the deal principles, our strapline is that they're simple but have a profound effect, are different conversations, which I think echoes of what other people have said, knowing community, place-based teams, asset-based approach, relentlessly applied, staff attitudes and behaviours, and that's across the area rather than per organisation, and ensuring frontline communities, individuals have the permission to innovate. So I think where we've looked at absolutely in mainstreaming the Wigan deal is we talked from the very beginning about it being embedded in our DNA, and that it's who we are and strong narrative of us being in this together, that people have the answers, and that everything we do needs to be founded on co-production, on transparency, and on trusting relationships. So just to give you a couple of examples, just to bring that to life. With very strong and brave political leadership, we created the Community Innovation Fund, and over the last 6 years that's seen 10 million invested in the hands of local communities and individual community leaders to really take control and have a meaningful impact on the lives of the people and local neighbourhoods. And inclusion has been a very important design principle of the Community Investment Fund, that it's not there to benefit just a small strata of Wigan people. It's there to improve the lives of everyone. Invested in the community book, which I think is one of the mechanisms really that makes the deal work, which is an online offer that matches the passions, interests and assets of individuals with all of the exciting stuff that's going on in their community, and has been an amazing tool, particularly for frontline practitioners, where they're looking to connect people in to their local neighbourhood, rather than the mad befriending, get people on a bus and send them to a day centre. We've had a relentless focus on the bigger picture, so based on the principle that we care about this place, and demand management, and the idea that doing the right thing for people at the right time prevents expensive crises further down the line. And we've had, again, the political and very senior support to ensure that that's translated into practice. We've got a set of Be Wigan behaviours: be positive, be accountable, and be courageous, which is shared by all organisations working across Wigan, because we really do believe that how we do things is just as important as what we do. Just maybe bringing it down to adult social care and health, working with Nesta and in the room, that's really where the deal started, and we've seen that formula applied right across the piece. So from public health to commissioning, we've got very different relationships with provider colleagues across the borough, based on that shared commitment to residents. We've seen a whole-scale shift from deficit assessments to different conversations, and applied it right across our substantial in-house services, with that big focus on customer journey and experience, which has been the foundation stone really for our quality assurance and our design. So just maybe identifying for people what really helped us in Wigan. I think that single shared narrative with the political and senior drive and commitment has been absolutely key. But also that went into the grain and recognised Wigan's identity as a very, very proud working class town. And that we worked and celebrated the contribution of people and communities right across the place. So, you know, we've got an amazing network of amateur sports clubs. We've got some big personalities within our communities. Barbara Neston, Trevor Barton, if people have ever come across them, made a big difference to our... Shall I just go through the challenges? Because I don't want to pretend we've got everything.
That sounds all a bit too easy so far.
Yeah. And just to recognise, we've worked with a lot of innovators vectors around the room, so community circles, shared lives plus, health and wellbeing teams. Challenging, I think, is the future challenges are ensuring that our total commitment to asset-based working is absolutely cemented in the culture of our emerging local care organisation. I think, as Martin described, at times that can crash up against a deep-rooted NHS culture. So that we're wrestling with that as we speak. And I think the other big challenge across the place is rising complexity. And I think both in health terms, but also in terms of the reality of people's lives. So I've recently picked up some responsibilities for housing and homelessness, and I think you only have to talk to people, open a newspaper to really start to see the welfare changes, the biting, insecure employment, and the impact of police cuts in particular on low-level criminal activity, drug dealing, and really just some of the pretty harrowing impact that's having on individuals and communities across the place. So they're the biggest challenges we're wrestling with at the moment. Okay.
Thanks, Jo. And I can see kind of common themes emerging with that relentless focus on different types of conversations, recognising people's strengths, and that shift away from just focusing on the money, which I think you kind of started with this evening, but recognising you have to also manage it as well. And the word courage has come up quite a few times as well, which I think is interesting. But to you, Les.
Yeah, good afternoon. Les Billingham, I'm Assistant Director for Adult Social Care and Community Development from Thurrock, which won't mean anything to most of you, but if you're looking at a map of England, we're on the Thames and we're kind of a little bit right of London and a little bit left of Essex. And if you've ever crossed the Thames on the QE2 bridge, that's kind of where we are. It's a real pleasure to be taken away from the tyranny of PowerPoint, because I had a presentation and I'm not going to talk about what I had in there at all, really, because it would have been a bit of all of the above, because pretty much everything everyone said, I'd have said as well, with the exception perhaps of the Wigan deal, about which I am very jealous, because that would be nice. But I want to talk to you about three things, about power, about leadership, and about delivery. Because I think they're kind of key to what we're talking about today. So the first thing is the notion of power and shifts in power, and the most obvious one is the shift from professionals knowing best to a notion of citizens being in control of the services that are there to help to support them, and then defining and designing largely their own support and what it looks like, built on, as you've already heard, their strengths and their gifts and their passions. And that's quite an easy thing to talk about, it's quite a difficult thing to deliver, more of which later. But also there's kind of other levels of power that it seems to me that we've been having to consider and try and work out how we can shift. One of those being organisations who are defined largely in their own self-image and who are set up largely to protect themselves, and moving people away from that organisational structure towards one where there's genuine collaboration about what's in the best interests of the people we're all supposed to be serving, rather than what's in the best interests of the organisation, is a kind of really challenging but really fundamental shift that we have to make. The one with service users, perhaps most easily described by just how useless it is to force people to talk to you with a bit of paper in your hand, as we saw earlier with the bingo, and that's exactly the way we've kind of always traditionally done it. So moving away from that concept of professional assessment much more towards conversation is clearly one of the planks behind what we're trying to do. But the other aspect of power that's interesting me more and more, and I think we've touched on it, but I think it's really worth talking about, is the idea of distributive methods of leadership, of self-management and of autonomy. And we've done quite a lot of thinking about that in Thurrock, based on a lot on the kind of Birdsong model, and working with Helen through wellbeing teams. And what's increasingly apparent is, if you're really going to unleash creativity and innovation of the people who are out there delivering the service, then you have to move away from that hierarchical structure that we all inherited, and you have to trust people, really genuinely trust people, and they have to trust you. So I think those kind of power imbalances are at the heart of everything we're trying to do. The second notion, and it kind of follows on from that really, is the one of leadership. This stuff has to be bottom up, but you have to start with a vision, and you have to start with some people who care enough and are passionate enough to want to see change happen. But the danger with that always is that it loses the bottom up, or the grassroots feel of it. So a model of leadership that is empowering and collaborative and encouraging, that's not about heroic leadership or charismatic leadership, is much more about people who have the ability to facilitate and to encourage genuine grassroots involvement in everything. Is the model that we should all be seeking, and it's a really difficult one to establish. And I think it was Martin said earlier, one of the failures I still feel in Thurrock is we have communities that are by and large disenfranchised and have been done to for so long, that really getting to trust us and to collaborate in what we're trying to do remains a significant challenge. The third and final thing I would say, and I'll try and be well within 6 minutes, is delivery. People with great ideas is fantastic, and models are fantastic, and we've heard about some really good examples here today. But actually, rolling your sleeves up and making this thing work is incredibly difficult. The amount of times you feel you've just kind of got there and then something shifts and you go back to the beginning, or somebody with real influence starts to question what you're doing, or members feel it's politically unsound to do what you're doing, or you meet resistance through things like the NHS, and don't knock them, we get on very well with our local CCG, but it is an organisation that appears to be very difficult to change. It's really, really, really tough, and I'd like to end with a plea, really, to those people at very, very senior levels in government and in the departments that have real influence. If you really want this change to happen, you've got to enable us and you've got to support us in that endeavour. And it too often feels like that mind shift at that level hasn't happened, and it actually works in opposition to rather than in support of real innovation and change.
Great, thank you. And there's something interesting about what you said, that this isn't just a top-down or bottom-up endeavour, it's both at the same time, and that I can imagine is hard. So, it's all hard. We've got two other people in the fishbowl, and then I'm generally going to create the space and open it up to you guys to jump in and ask questions. So we've got Bob and John, who have been up and down the country seeing some interesting things happening, and also doing some stuff and some thinking on ethical commissioning. So I think what's also come up in the discussions today is that, it's about power of conversation and shifting behaviour and culture, but it's also about how you do shift the resources and the money and the commissioning differently as well. So I'm going to hand over to them.
It's me first. Yeah. I know you said 2 minutes, but believe me, you'll have to do a White House microphone grab to get us off me in 2 minutes here. There are two things striking me, really. Can I say, first of all, I've been teaching and researching in social policy since 1969. So I'm almost up to half a century. Someone should have put me out of grass years ago, but I keep coming back. And looking back over half a century, You think, well, what's the most striking thing? And the most striking thing is failure. Policy and practice failure. The landscape of the last half-century is littered with well-intentioned and long-forgotten initiatives. So we first of all have to ask ourselves, what's so different about all of this? Can it be different? I want to refer to two paradoxes. Paradox one is, I'm basically just repeating what Les has said here, which was really good. Change is possible, but all change is hard. And significant change is significantly hard, because what you're talking about there is shifting to a different paradigm, a different way of conceptualizing and understanding social care. And paradigm shift is excruciatingly difficult, but surely that's what you want here today. We're not here today to applaud a handful of lively local initiatives. We're here to see if we can change the way the whole debate is going. There are two questions to ask, I think, about policy failure. One would be, are the initiatives in some way flawed or misconceived? In other words, is the policy design deficient? The other question is the policy design okay, but is the context within which it has to take root so hostile that it can never flourish? Now, when you listen to what we've heard today, I'm sure there are many other parts of the country, it's interesting, I think. We're not talking about 1, 2 or 3 places. You can look right across the country and things are happening. So my first conclusion from today's events is the need to move towards a social movement rather than a few isolated examples of good practice. And I guess this is part of it, isn't it? It may need to be more structured and formalised. So, either we go the same way as everyone else in the last 50 years, or this time it's different. Second paradox, I'll be 1 minute, Dan, I promise. It again is what Les mentioned, it's the bottom-up, top-down paradox. All meaningful change takes place locally, but all significant long-term change can only take place if it has top-down support. If you're always against the policy grain, you'll always struggle. And at the moment, we're against the policy grain, aren't we? I guess strictly it's political change that might make that different. But there's one thing we can and probably should do in the meantime. If all the things we've heard today are pieces of the jigsaw, I think we still need a much clearer vision of the picture on the jigsaw box. Then we know which bits we've got, which bits are missing, and what the whole thing looks like. And I'm surprised. I've had a lot of interest in things I've been writing on this in The Guardian and blogs, and Nestor kindly giving me some support. But I think we need to work more closely on that. So my 2 big conclusions from today are: become a social movement and get a good, clear idea of what the picture on the box is. Because, as I said in the tweet this morning, it's not enough to whinge. We need an alternative vision that commands support.
That's almost what we're going to do after this session as well, so it's a nice
Yeah, you should maybe go and ask Bob for that final word. I've been reading Bob's work since 1969, so, and I'm going to refer to it in a minute. I've been visiting some of these schemes, everybody to the left has suffered a visit from them. I'm just going to throw out a few observations from what I think might be key ingredients. The first observation is, in the places I've visited, community development in its widest sense, has been really well established in the community almost before social care discovered it. So 20 plus years of community development in Leeds, the work with older people's community development in Leeds, outstanding. Any city would be really proud to have that network of neighbourhood centres that you developed. I remember village agents in Somerset 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and how important they were. I'm having conversations with people in Somerset, ironically, which is kind of an interesting piece of history. Out of adversity, sometimes things arise, how the floods galvanised communities, and to some extent, the work that Community Catalyst was able to support you with was able to build on that community development. Thurrock, local area coordination, 12 years, 15 years, okay, 10 years in the making, really well established. So community development, really important ingredient in, and I like the kind of emergence of that in terms of unpriming people are talking about to kind of keep sustaining that. My second observation is everywhere I go, people tell me they're doing asset-based social work now. I haven't been anywhere, that's not, they're almost their opening mind. That slightly worries me, because actually that also means some people will be doing it well, and some people either may not really be doing it or will be doing it badly. And how are we going to know? And I know the council I visited has suffered this from me, because one of the things I keep saying to them is, how can we build a database that's going to actually help support us? Because actually, I think, irrespective of what you said, the money does matter. We are in a period of austerity. The 1970s had a significant period of community social work. David Beers, from the young person in the room, who remember the Barclay report, and all that kind of work that happened there. The Thatcher era cut that to bits. How do we ensure this is sustainable? So we do have to look at the evidence, and my last comment is, my disappointment in pretty well almost everywhere I visited, bar one place, is that at times the model seemed very simplistic in relation to people and their communities. It's a really important issue, people and their communities. Some people, when they come to social care for help, have been excluded from their communities, disaffected by their communities, or various things have happened. And I didn't hear enough in the conversations I was having with the places about how they were going to use the skills to help people link. Very interestingly, one place that's not here today I visited is Coventry, where actually their starting point, their starting point is a conversation about actually how are we going to help you reduce your frailty, gain confidence, re-establish yourself as a citizen, find solutions to the problems you've got, almost prior to then looking at how you're going to function in the community. And I think for me, I know that has a little element of does the state know best, but it's actually how that conversation goes that actually helps people who are disaffected.
Great, thank you. So we've travelled across the country from Somerset to Wigan to Barnsley to Leeds to York, and I want to bring us back into the People's History Museum and hand it over to you guys now. So just take 20 or 30 seconds to think about a question you really want to ask and jump in and ask them. We could probably do this for hours, so please do write down the questions and hold on to them. We'll ask you to kind of stick them up on the wall if we don't get to them. But we've probably got time for about 3 or 4 questions for these guys in particular. Before we kind of shift mode a little bit and think about how do we start to create the vision, collective vision, and kind of start even further. This is always a test of people's bravery of who's going to jump into the fishbowl first. But it's up to you guys. Jump in. You can also go together. There's 2 spare chairs, so just jump into the chair. Please do. In the chair. You have to jump into the fishbowl, yeah?
That's no, maybe I do really. There's an old
my name is Callie and I'm here today not representing any organisation but just as somebody who has been involved for many, many years, supports someone with learning disabilities who's nearly 48 to live an independent life, who supports mother-in-law with dementia and has for the last few months been supporting literally 24/7 with my husband, somebody with a mental health issue to stop them committing suicide and not going into hospital. So actually the point I wanted to make is I'm actually feeling that carers or families, I don't like the word carers, are a little bit invisible here. The Audit Commission in 2014 actually said that the single biggest group for social care were all of those people propping up the system. It was lovely to hear you from Barnsley, you did mention the word family. And I think sometimes as a model, I think my question is really how do we develop a model, an asset-led model that links people, families and communities, because quite often when we're talking, we link from people to communities, and it doesn't really make sense to me. There's a whole group of people, I agree, that don't have families to support them and are disconnected from their communities, but really the whole health and social care system at the moment is predicated on the fact that we will be doing it.
So same question again, how do we create a model of that?
So it's about how do we incorporate in our thinking a model that actually thinks about that in a big way? Because under the Care Act also you have responsibilities for carers as well. Okay.
You can stay there and wait for a response for a second. We've also got someone else that's like to hold on that question and then we'll try and come back to the question.
Well, that's good. I was worried you were going to ask the question I was going to ask, but I hadn't done so. I'm Nick Dixon, I'm from the Greater Manchester Health and Care Partnership. It's such a great opportunity, I couldn't miss it, posing a question to you. And Les, I thought what you said was absolutely spot on about power and politics and how difficult this is, how tough it is. My question is about relational working, and I'm really interested in what the rest of you have done around this. Asset-based area, asset-based commissioning, it's about the coalition of the willing. It's about good collaboration. It often takes place in the front line, where people work well together, but higher up the food chain, that trust that you need for collaboration is often missing, and I think there's two barriers I've picked out: fear and organisational preciousness. So the fear, I think, comes from what Leslie and Bob was picking up on, which is about the politics. It's about the media, it's about the inspectorates. There's many, where there's many here in Greater Manchester waiting for the DEVO arrangements to fail. There's a fear that we're going to get blamed. Like one of my questions around how you overcome that very human response to having the finger pointed at you. The organisational preciousness comes from austerity, I think, the need to survive. So these mitigate against collaboration. So my question is about how any thoughts about how you overcome those barriers, those very human barriers to building trust between at a very senior level in organisations, because we're finding it's one of the biggest challenges. Thanks, Gary.
So I'll start the answer. Coming to Callie's question first. I believe if you take a truly strengths-based and assets-based approach to the individual in front of you, you can't overlook the family, the carer. So we have really gone out of our way to try and stop seeing people who contact us as problems, as issues, as cost, as money, seeing them as valued citizens of Somerset, who our job is to help them live as prosperous a life as possible. So the work we do isn't very much about how do we help that person recover or develop coping mechanisms, whatever it is, but in the context of the family they're in. It's, I think I mentioned it earlier, it has required, though, our workers thinking completely differently about that. And one of the things that's really helpful for us is having really good relationships with family members who are really brutal in telling us when we don't get it right. So that's the first thing. I suppose the second thing, just coming back to how do you deal with those skeptics across the system, I think it is coming back to having a really strong belief and articulating that belief at every opportunity. But quite simply, we say it's all about doing the right thing. If you do the right thing, you can't go wrong. You will get the outcomes that you want, whether that's you as an individual, whether it's the person who's looking at the purse strings, and we're all doing that. story. I've been fixated on detox for a while, like most directors, and I remember ringing up the chief operating officer in the community trust to say, I'm a bit worried, Andy, about your detox. And he said, well, you don't need to be worried about them, they're not yours. I said, no, I'm worried about the... He said, yeah, but they're not social care delays, why are you worried? I said, they're Somerset delays, they're impacting upon Somerset citizens, and little things like that start to chip away at some of those barriers. Because the reality is, whether you're in health, social care, voluntary sector, or whoever, we're all out trying to get the best for our citizens. And sometimes we don't articulate or argue or just talk about that enough. So that's one of the things we find successful.
Yeah, and to pick on that, it's interesting, so believe first, and I think there's 4 elements. You have to believe what you hear and see, that you think feels right, and then go out. You know, we don't just encourage social workers to go outside. My role is overseeing commissioning. All our commissioners spend their lives out in communities, learning and thinking. And it is about being bold. You know, people know when you don't get sacked. You have to go a long way and really confident to be sacked. Best you can do is be disappeared. So, you know, I think you can be really bold. And then really focus on changing that vision to clear action. So in our commissioning role, we just deliberately moved away from commissioning as a form of procurement. So actually, as little commissioning as possible. We've gone back to grants. We just did our first 10-year grant this year, which is a really bold thing to do with the third sector organisation. You know, just stop all that procurement nonsense where you can. And then finally, what is beginning to see the results. For us, that's backed with all those stories. And we've had more than 6 minutes and we've told dozens of stories about where we're seeing. But going back to the networks, you know, they've been going on enough now, we've seen a big impact. Leeds spends more on residential care and home care than actual characters. And it's got people going later because they have a good life at home, so you contact people. We think ABCD is going to take that way further.
And let's talk about the response as well. And we've got a spare chair here, you want to jump in and ask another question as well. We've probably got a few more minutes.
So yeah, just to reflect from my perspective, very personal perspective, I guess. And I just wanted to share with you, Kate and I work in a directorate called Community Director. We don't sit in adult social care, nor do we sit in children's social care. And I would challenge back sometimes to both of those areas is that you are driven by individual policies, frameworks, etc. But actually when you're working with families and communities, it's about the families and it's about the communities. So there's a big challenge we put back into both adults and children's social care about sometimes the silos within which you operate. And thankfully those challenges are well received. But in terms of the Greater Manchester Partnership, I guess I reflect a little bit around South Yorkshire Bassett Law Integrated Care System as a comparator. There is a real danger that the language that is being used in some of those conversations is far too complicated and is disconnected from place. The people like me and my colleagues and, you know, Joan that's trying to do something about it and Ratton Group in Earth Street just feels completely disconnected from, so the language is problematic. And it also reflects on some recent peer reviews I've done with some local authorities in the North West, which has really been about telling a story. If people feel that their stories of change and improvement and, you know, celebration against that broader vision aren't heard, aren't recognised and aren't thanked and celebrated, then people have a potential around walking away and putting their energies and efforts into what they can do on streets and villages and neighbourhoods. So that's my, I guess, a bit of a, it's not helpful, but it's about it is about cups of coffee. We have too many bloody meetings, for goodness sake, cups of coffee, biscuits, and having a chat about the vision that we're trying to achieve. Are we still on board with it? What stories are we sharing and understanding this week?
Great, thank you. My colleagues are having kittens about the timing, so I'm going to pass over to Les, and then 2 questions from Sharon and Simon, with some rapid responses.
Okay, really quickly, just to answer your question. Not that I've got an answer, but just a couple of comments, really, because it's a really difficult question, but it's the right one. I think it was kind of alluded to earlier from Somerset. There is something about individual integrity and staying true to what you believe and behaving in the right way and modelling that behaviour that eventually becomes influential in terms of working with organisations, working with individuals, but it has to be, as I said earlier, distributive. So it has to be a behaviour that is modelled throughout, from the very bottom up, everyone you're dealing with. So it's about identifying those people in communities who have that presence, have that ability to do that. And it can happen, but I've no kind of obvious alchemy about how it happens. And the second thing is, sometimes it's just luck. We have a fantastic team at Thurrock, and all of my colleagues are pretty similar people. We're not massively egotistical, not massively ambitious, but we all do, as twee as it sounds, kind of feel doing the right thing is the right thing to do, and that just starts to permeate stuff. But how you bring that about, I don't know.
Right, Scary Dan says I've got to be quick. So it's about courage and leadership. I'm from Community Catalyst. We work in local authorities with fantastically strong, courageous leaders. And it's their leadership which makes what we do possible, and their change. So how do we enable sustainability, long-term sustainability, and all this wonderful innovation, so that it isn't all destroyed if somebody comes in who doesn't actually, or it's not an agenda or want to do something new?
That's fabulous, because I had two questions and yours was one of them. That's really helpful for me. I'm Simon, I work in at the moment the NHS England's personalised care group, but like many of the people in this room, I've been involved in various different organisations, various different capacities, working in this space for a long time, and it's great to see lots of familiar faces around the room. My other question was, I'm really inspired by some of the changes that you guys have managed to make at scale, and I thought I'd be encouraged to move to Wigan as a southerner, but now I'm thinking about it. So my question is, I was actually inspired by, a video that Rich Watts, who I know would like to be in the air, who's done a lot of work on the personalised care vision paper in NHS England. He shared a video meme, is that right, the right word? Video meme? One of those very short videos that everyone thinks is amazing. Of this, and it's a dog sitting at a garden patio window. I don't know if anyone's seen it. And the garden patio window is open, but the dog is sitting there, not realising that it's open. And someone has to go there and pretend to open this imaginary door that isn't there, and then the dog leaps kind of into the garden. So my question is inspired by that. What is it that we're missing? What is it that is actually not as hard as we think it is to get some of this change happening at scale?
I'd kind of like to answer particularly the issue that Sian raised, because having been involved originally as director in Barnsley, going to York, done some very similar things, but in a very different environment, and now trying to do some similar stuff in Liverpool. My belief is that it goes back to what Les was saying. If you do the right thing and you get that story behind you, it actually becomes quite quickly that you can't undo it. And I remember the leader in Barnsley, when we signed up to personalisation and individual budget pilot side, we didn't have a clue what we signed up to, but actually what we found out quite quickly was that it was the beginning of something that was going to be a big journey for us. And he himself said, there's no going back, is there? And the answer is no, there wasn't, because it was a very powerful voice that came from the individuals. I think going back to the other question that you raised, for me, I think that we've got to recognise sometimes that some change can be big things, but often change is the little things. It's that little thing that makes a difference in somebody's life, and you've got to make sure that one of the things, certainly in Liverpool, they don't tell anybody about the big things, but we don't celebrate the little things either, and we've got to share that. And it isn't fur coating now and nowhere. It is about just sharing those messages, because it gets people to think creatively. It gives a message of the art of the possible, but it also just recognises what's that little thing that you could make somebody's life better or different. And actually, we might not be able to get political buy-in sometimes to do big things, but I think we can do that. And I want to just make one comment really about the previous question was, I think from Greater Manchester, I think the way you get people together, it is about basic values and principles and that vision stuff. You've got to keep revisiting it. We fashioned two things. One is bring to life that we are custodians of public money. A pound in Liverpool is just a pound. It's a Liverpool pound, whether it's health, social care, in a different sector, or even in an individual's pocket. The question we've got to ask ourselves is, are we getting the best value for that pound in terms of the outcomes that are actually being delivered? And I think if you do that, it's quite clear. The other thing that we did, and I think it was come learning actually necessarily from Barnsley days, which we've taken through, we all do is try things in terms of reference and meetings and so on. One of the key things, we don't just put the values and principles in it, we put behaviours in it. Do we follow those behaviours? Because we're all pretty good wordsmiths. You can put all those things down, but actually do we hold each other to account in a way that we are actually enacting those behaviour shifts?
Right. Final word from you, and then we're going to have
Okay, I'll try and give 20 seconds on each. So Shannon's point about change, my flippant answer is, well, you can just stay. I worked for adult social care needs for over 40 years, I just never bothered moving. But what you do in your failures, you find allies, and they might not be the obvious ones. So sometimes for me it's been in the third sector, sometimes in the culture world, sometimes in the directorates. And I think in terms of things that are relatively easy, stories, get those stories from communities. And my quick story in the story, at Kingston's conference a couple of weeks ago, I went with a community connector from Leeds. She told her personal journey from patient to the needs groups. 2 GPs in the room, and they worked out how much they had saved just by her story, and they funded another ABCD project because they're very cheap.
Great. And that feels like a good time to conclude this session. And before we do, I just want everyone to give a big round of applause because it's not an easy thing sitting in the middle of the room. And so we've gone on slightly longer than we anticipated, but I felt it was the right thing to do given the richness of the learning and the discussions that were kind of being shared and questions being posed. We got lots of time to continue the discussions. Stephen unfortunately had to go because he had to head back to Somerset for a meeting tonight apparently. So he sends his apologies. But we're going to move into what we're calling a marketplace next, which is also an opportunity for you guys to grab a tea, coffee, I think there's a bar with beer as well up there if you really want. And in the marketplace we're going to have a good half hour, 45 minutes for you to meet the innovations that are around the room and get to know the resources that are out there and some of the other wider learning. But we want you to do that with the following question in mind, which is going to kind of lay the foundations for what we're going to do after the marketplace, which is how do we take some of this learning that's been shared in the room, also the innovations and innovators that are kind of on the edges of these rooms with stalls and take this from the margins to the mainstream. How do we continue to grow this? And given what's been shared in the fishbowl around this is about culture, power, values and behaviours, we'll have to start thinking about the tangibles and intangibles. So it's going to be, I think Les, to your point, it's hard. But I'm confident that the collective wisdom in this room, it's got to be the start of thinking differently about how we do it. So that's what I'm asking you to do for the marketplace. We're going to try and come back just after 4, so we're shifting timings around a bit. But before we do that, we have one final request from Isaac, which I've got no idea what it's about.
So, good afternoon everybody. First time I've really gate crashed the stage, but here I am. This is the first of many I hope. It's really important that we start capturing some of what people are saying. So I've got a question, and I'll be here today, and there'll be one of my colleagues tomorrow that will capture this on a film, and we're asking people, how are you going to make this social care future real? And if anybody would like to share their experience or thoughts on how we're going to really make this happen, please do find me.
And that's sharing it on camera. Great, thank you. So, it's your time. You've got a good half hour, 45 minutes. Grab a drink, there's some outside. We're going to move the room around, but do meet the innovations and innovators around the room as you do that. And also make some new connections.
Okay, thanks for watching this afternoon. See you later. Follow the hashtag #SocialCareFuture on Twitter, or subscribe to this YouTube channel to get notifications when we next go live, which will be half an hour, 45 minutes.